Well, I was looking at something yesterday saying some research around like long-term growth and how marketing budgets, how that should be fed into sort of growth. Saying 50% should be on short-term activations, short-term campaigns, and that can be very much numbers-based. So we're looking very much at your ROI, very tangible campaign. Yeah. We've put this in, what do we get out, type of thing. And they're saying 50% should be around brand building. Because that's where the storytelling element comes in, because what you're trying to do is create that emotional connection with your target audience, with the view that over the long term they have greater brand association, brand affiliation. They'll suffer higher margins because they just want to be part of the brand because they're emotionally invested. And I think that's almost what we're trying to do with this. And it's partly experimental, but it's also how do you create that emotional connection around something.
I wonder how many marketing managers, directors out there think about the split of their budget in that way. Because it reminded me when you said that about a study that McKinsey did years ago now that I remember reading, where they said a 70-30 split between what works and experimentation. And even defining what fits into the bucket called what works, but on what timescale. Maybe your 50-50 is of the 70%, or who knows? Because it takes a long time to know whether something like a bit of storytelling like that will work or not. We've done the same with things like ebooks that we've written before for ourselves and for our clients. In the first 6 months, maybe you just get a trickle of downloads, but then it seems to just get a bit of momentum and people are talking about it. It gets referred to and you get links posted on forums and suddenly the traffic goes up. Then you start getting a couple of inquiries, then you start winning some work like we did one this summer, didn't we? That was a case study of ours, which is great that it happens. But if you'd have judged that based on what you've got in the first 6 months, or even podcasting. I was talking about this to Ed last week when he came on. You can set up a podcast. We've been doing this for a year now, haven't we, on the SME Growth Podcast. When would you, if you had a really hard-nosed marketing director challenging us on how much time and money we spend doing this could have been canned a long time ago. Yeah. And yet it could well be that in 1 more year's time, or 2 more, 3, who knows, that you get that massive breakthrough from it.
But that's where I think it comes back to, with the storytelling and everything, it's back to really fundamental brand values, which is something we've been talking about this week with a couple of clients. Because I think that if you really get into that, why, who are we? Why are we? What's our purpose? What's our values? What are we trying to do here? That is not that shouldn't be a short term, in a short term kind of focus. That's a really kind of, we're in this for the long term, 10, 20 years. So if you start thinking about it, when you're telling stories, when you're trying to create that emotional connection, it's a bit strong for B2B, but it's still, we're all still humans, right? So, but that really tapping into who are we, what are our values, what are we trying to get across here? How do we really show our customers that we care? Yeah. And you could do that with some stats. You could say, okay, well, look at our service rates, 99% customer satisfaction. Like, really? But actually, if you saw a really emotive, why do we go to the cinema? Why do we spend so much money on, 100 million on making the latest blockbuster? It's because we really do connect with these stories. And I think maybe for a lot of either SMEs or B2B marketing, it can seem a little bit fluffy or...
Well, we've talked before about marketing being the poor relation in the C-suite. And it needs, one of our missions is to make sure that companies properly take marketing seriously and realize that it's an essential business function to generate leads, either short term or long term.
When you talk about that, once again, instinctively, it's got to be a benefit. Yeah, surely brand consistency is a thing, but I think most business owners regard that as almost a bit of housekeeping that the marketing department does. Just make sure that everybody's got their company PowerPoint presentation templates at the ready and that their business cards have all been pretty well, all that sort of stuff. But you took that to another level, showed me some research where it's been shown that it's got an actual bottom line effect. Which I would have thought that's quite surprising to prove, but someone has.
Yeah, just coming across some research recently from Lucid Press, who are also known as Mark now, and they stated on there that revenues could increase 10 to 20% roughly if the brand consistency is done properly and throughout.
And that's some research that they did across different companies, either with or without brand consistent messaging.
Yeah, I think also with that, it just when you are looking at putting more content out there, which I think again, in recent years, companies are doing a lot more. I think it's roughly 80% of companies are 80%. Sorry, of content is being pushed more. So at the same time, all those elements, whether it's video, social media, ebooks, advertising in general, if the dots don't join together, all that sort of affects that as well. And
it's to something. This is a project we had earlier in the year, late summer, and we had to produce an awful lot of content. Quite tight deadlines, team pull around, great effort by all involved. But it's where you had to leverage the content production across a broader team. And without this sort of very strong voice, this tone, this not just, let's say colours, fonts, that sort of thing, but there's a lot more to it than that. How does this company talk? Do we have a professional? Are we cheeky, chappy? Are we what's the style? And without that, how do you get lots of people to all write content and make it look as if it's coming from the same?
We've got to be data driven. We've always been data driven, and it's this sort of insight that we try to bring to our clients as well. So don't get drawn in by some of these vanity metrics. And I picked out two just because these were high up on our list of where we get good impressions for our web pages, but have starkly different responses. So our number one web page for impressions is a HubSpot related page. And it just talks about HubSpot software. Now, clearly that's quite competitive because HubSpot themselves talk about it and every other partner talks about it. But we get something over the period, I think this was a year, was it? No, it was a couple of months. We got 17,000 impressions for that particular web page and 2 clicks. Pretty poor click-through. What's the point? What's the point of having a web page, even if it gets lots of impressions on Google, if only 2 people have clicked on that over 17,000? And yet the second one on our list for the same period, last couple of months, was our Good Board Meetings Guide webpage, which talks about the guide that you can download. I had 16,000 impressions and got 146 clicks. So there is a danger that you get drawn in by how many impressions you get or how good the ranking is of a keyword or something on Google. But if it's not bringing traffic to your website, and even then if it is, but it doesn't go anywhere, what's the point?
I mean, our top performing blog was one that was written. We used to get 600 or 700 visits a month just to that blog. And that was for something somebody wrote a while ago on copywriting, copywriting software.
Free copywriting tools, I think.
I think it was, I can't even remember why we wrote it. I think it was a bit of a test piece, really. Just somebody, that's what they did. And
I think Gemma did it.
Gemma did it. And it was.
Hi, Gemma. Hope you're doing well.
And but nobody ever came through to the website, despite putting banner ads in there and experimenting with it.
Read the blog, but then didn't go on from there.
Didn't come in. So
you can grab traffic for free. You can just write about something sensational, can't you, and get people to your website. But you've got to get the right audience and get them on the right subject so that they are going to be interested in something else that you've got.
And I think increasingly as well, something we're looking at is whereabouts in the funnel are you getting your traffic? So is it top of funnel, bottom of funnel? You can get a lot of top of funnel traffic that doesn't really do anything for you. So I don't know where you're going.
What's the point of having someone steering if they don't know where they're going?
Yep, exactly. And my oft quoted proverb.
I've been waiting for this.
Proverb 29 about without a vision the people perish. And I think no truer word been spoken when it comes to talking about vision. I think what we've seen over working with 100 plus SMEs is that you could probably distinguish those companies where there's been a strong vision, regardless of what that vision is or not, but just the fact that there is a vision, versus those companies where they don't take it seriously, because oftentimes it's seen as being a bit fluff, or there is a difference over time. It may not be one of those things that's noticed in 12 months, 6 to 12 months, but over a course of maybe 5 years, you can very clearly see the difference in results between those companies where they've really focused on, we're going to set our stall out to grow, and we're going to set our stall out to do X, Y, Z. This is where we're heading. Versus those companies that don't take it seriously and tend to just flatline.
Well, they just treat tomorrow like another version of today, or carry on, don't they? It's easy that way. But I think you're right. There's that phrase, if you have a vision without a plan, it's just a dream. I'm not sure that's always true, is it? A lot of strategic decisions are taken because an opportunity arises, and if you've got a clear vision that it either fits your vision or it doesn't. You don't have to have had a plan for an opportunity to crop up.
But I think those companies where they have a strong vision, it almost engenders a different culture. And we're going to stray into a culture discussion, but I think if you've got that this is where we're clearly going. This is what, and maybe it's not so defined that there's wiggle room. If an opportunity comes along, you're in a much better position to capitalize on it than if you don't ever think about the future. You're always thinking about what's just in front of me, the next step. Opportunity comes along, you haven't got the people around you haven't got the resources, you haven't got the capital, you haven't got all this other stuff to actually take advantage of it. So I would say that vision piece is absolutely critical. So the next one's on innovation and risk taking.
And we made this comment just now, didn't we, that if you're too conservative, you don't invest, you don't speculatively recruit, you don't take advantage of opportunities as they come by, and that a lot of business decisions are effectively bets. No one's giving you a guarantee that something that you do is definitely going to pay back or give you the returns that you want. You have to use your best judgment to pursue the success of the company. So you've got to have a certain amount of risk appetite, but don't go too far. And I guess that's why a lot of research has been done on this area. Where is the balance? Just enough risk taking. Don't be too conservative, but don't bet the farm.
Well, there was a HBR podcast where they talked about this. And they said that CEOs tend to be a lot more risk averse when they're kind of new into the role. But actually, as many as 45% of them had not only made a mistake, but a major career blow up. And that boards actually do want to see someone who's had to deal with a tremendous amount of pressure, and the fact that an individual is able to describe, explain, and own up to the failure.
Now, it talks there about the paradox from that is that there's a disconnect between selection processes and successful traits, because generally it is perceived by, and maybe recruitment boards, sub-boards within big PLCs tend to look for a good solid background without those blow-ups. And yet, as you say, in that research, they found that the most successful CEOs had something pretty major go wrong in the past. And that's where you get your learning from, right? If you haven't had at least a near miss, then you don't know quite what to look for.
I'm saying to people, have you got a 22-year-old attending your strategy meetings at board level? And most people say, no, why would I? I said, because they are viewing the environment completely differently to you. You should have them there. And I've come across examples where people said, we have a 25-year-old, they have transformed our thinking and we are motoring.
Mentioned there that he's running the business by the bank account, and we see that too often, especially for smaller businesses, because I know it's easier to do. And the sort of halfway fix we've got there, obviously we're trying to persuade them to have better monthly reporting and have an acknowledgement of what a balance sheet is for. A lot of small business owners run it by the P&L and don't really understand balance sheet. That's all for the accountants. So you try and explain a little bit about what that's there for, and that it's important and that's there for a reason. But the sort of halfway house we try and get people used to the idea of is jam jar accounting, as we call it. When your grandma used to put pennies in the jar on the mantelpiece for the electricity bill or for the birthdays or for whatever you need. And I remember, that's something that I was taught very young is put money aside for those things that are going to be coming in the future. In business terms, it may be a VAT bill or your PAYE even monthly, and certainly the corporation tax every year, let alone those big spends like insurances when they come out, if you're not spreading the cost of those. And so many companies don't do it. So at least if you say, well, open another couple of bank accounts, just savings accounts, and at least put all your VAT in one of them. So whenever you bill an invoice and it's got that 20% added on the top, either when it gets paid or even when you cut the invoice, put that money aside. It's not your money.
No, well, I mean, what does I can't remember who says it now, but I'll quote them anyway. But I'm sure it's someone in the business world. Your business as a limited company or even as a sole trader, you have basically a 20% shareholder, and that's called the government. So enjoy that shareholder being there. They don't make a lot of noise, but they do want their 20% share, and that's the first rule that you need to get over. But it's interesting to sit with that individual and go through it, and the realization, is sort of 2-hour meeting where he's sitting there and he's not used to being in an office because he fixes trucks and he's never run a business before, and you can see that stress and that realization, kind of relief and then realization. And I think we try really hard to try and make it as easy for them as possible, but ultimately they are responsible for their business, and they need to, if they understand what's coming down the line, at least they can try and plan for it. And like you said, we straight away go, open a saves account, put some money away for corp tax, put some money away for VAT, because it's coming. And we can tell you roughly what it's going to be based on your run rates. And that's
easier to understand than trying to go through the whole of what balance sheets are for. Everyone can understand the rainy day fund or the jam jar accounting methodology. You put your tax to one side. So there's this new breed of GPTs which allow you to ring fence that data and train it only on yours, called private GPTs. There's actually a product called Private GPT, but that's not the only one. There are others as well. Copilot, Microsoft product, do the same thing. And I took all of the information readily available on our LAN, on our network, and uploaded it to them. So I put our employee handbook on it, all of our accounts for the last 15 years, financial accounts and management accounts by month, our insurance policy, and all these documents that I came up with, and bung it all in there. And then I just started asking it sort of high-level questions rather than fact-finding questions. And I said, describe the history of Well Meadow Limited. I shared it with you, didn't I?
Yeah.
And it was remarkable. It gave this narrative, which we could have written ourselves. Between 2010 and 2013, they did this and they invested in that, and this area grew and this area didn't. And then there was a phase where this happened and then that happened. And I think
it was pretty remarkable.
Both blown away by it. Wow, that's an interesting narrative about our journey. So then we started thinking, where else could we take that then? So my dream for this, if this is going to work or not, and there are business owners out there that I want to have a chat to about this to see if they're prepared to give it a go. But imagine if you uploaded it with every month's management accounts, including trial balance, maybe some output from the CRM system, what deals are in the pipeline, and maybe something to do with your cash, maybe your bank balance or in your bank statement. Basically, just throw at it whatever you can. Throw the kitchen sink at it, but in a private space. And then each month when you upload the new stuff, instead of asking it to go and find a piece of information, ask it for an opinion. And ask it a question like, what should the board be discussing this month?
Yeah.
Now, I'd be fascinated to see how that goes, because we could have insights that we've never had before. If it's had all the risk registers put in there before, all the ISO audit results, basically the lot, then it might come up with something to say, did you realise it's been 3 years since this? Or every 20 months this happens and you're overdue one. Yeah. Or even just your insurance is due for renewal next month and you never challenge it and you're paying too much.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. But wouldn't it be interesting if they could, or even they could say, I know you just had a great month of profits, but in 3 months' time you're going to make a loss because I've just seen the order intake or the weighted pipeline, and maybe it just brings to your attention stuff that is knowable. It's not that rocket sciencey. Yeah. But you've got overload of information and you're not looking at the right thing.
It just speeds it up, isn't it?
And it brings it to your attention. Exactly. Okay, so look, we're not experts in this sort of stuff by any means, but we've been around a few of these sort of examples, haven't we? So let's not be blasé about it. Let's just build this into our everyday work. Don't make a big fuss about it as if it's the most important thing. And I know how people regard this in terms of their priorities of everything else in business. But if for one moment in the year it's made you think a little bit about, well, what would we do then if the crisis struck tonight or tomorrow morning? At least who would be in my crisis team? How are we going to organise those meetings? Who does what? Who's the PR company if we're going to use one? Just some of those basics that we've mentioned about. And maybe at the very least, go and check your insurance and make sure that if there's any requirements in there, you're complying with them. Otherwise, you've just invalidated your policy because you didn't check you had the right locks on your windows or something crazy. Part of that is admitting mistakes. Yeah. And I think there's one of the traps I would have put much higher up in their list is that as a leader, you resist admitting mistakes, and yet you've got to embrace that. If you need everybody else to be able to do that, we've got to celebrate our mistakes as long as they lead to learning. And if the leader themselves don't, if they say to everybody else, own up to your mistakes and I won't, judge you as long as we learn from it, but I won't own up to mine, then you're not leading by example, are you? You're not going to get others doing the same. Just make everything transparent. I think there's a danger that you leave things quite opaque because that gives you room to a bit of wiggle room, maybe places to hide, places to cover. You don't necessarily have to explain your thinking all the time. If you haven't been open about it, you can just say, well, I've taken lots of things into consideration and this is my view. It just builds distrust. How do I know that my opinion has properly been taken into account, or have you considered such and such?